Not for the whole year, and I haven't been. He told me for the whole year, I only saw 2 mil blacks for some shit.
820.
No.
January 1st, August 20. 54 tags, 2 mil blacks, 7 Hispanics, 7 other, 10 white, 3 Asians. So where are you targeting the perks that you just told me?
Well, like I said, if I don't see a perk jumping over the turnstile, what am I supposed to do to him? That's what I'm saying.
These people are not going to pop.
I don't know that I have a female Hispanic that I stopped, and she said they did pop actually for a warrant, and I arrested her. Female Hispanics, the Hispanics that were supposed to be going out that committing the crimes, the people that I
think that she was gonna pop.
Did I think she was gonna pop? I didn't put no thought into it. If you come up and you're getting and you'll come up a collar, I'm taking you in.
This is what I see. You describe to me who's committing the crime and you're fully aware of it. We're not targeting those people.
I'm targeting everybody who's blacks, whoever's out there. If I catch,
so you only saw 2 male blacks jump in turn.
If you're saying that's what's in front of you, then yes, that's all I saw. There's 2 male blacks from over here jumping in turn. That's what you're saying is in front of you. I'm not disputing that. You're saying that's what I got there?
That's not disputing here.
Well, I'm saying, but we also saw Hispanics as well. I stopped a lot of Hispanics too.
7 male Hispanics, but more than half are females.
And like I said, everybody's committing violations in front of me.
So to give you more context in case, you know, it was a little difficult to decipher what was going on there, a tab is basically a citation, okay? And also when they say the person, did you expect that person to pop, it means when you write a citation for someone and then you find out that there's a warrant out for their arrest, right? And then you can arrest them. And so the commanding officer is trying to ensure that he targets people who are more likely to pop, right? So they can arrest them for warrants. But the reason why this whole conversation came up is because throughout the whole year, it appears that this officer, Michael Birch, had only given citations to 2 black males. And the captain's like, what's up with you not targeting black males enough? At least that's the way it was implied through that conversation. So he's...
No, it was, Anna, you're being way over generous. That was clear. That was crystal clear. Why aren't you targeting black males? So... the cops, the commanding officer's excuse, we know it, they're more likely to commit crime. But Birch just told you, I went after everyone who jumped a turnstile. So what did you want me to do? He says, I want you to get more black males. But they didn't jump the turnstile. I targeted the people who jumped the turnstile. Not good enough. So wait, he's like, I stopped the people who are doing something wrong. That is not the right thing to do. No, not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to target black males.
It's insane.
I get it. I get it. What they're going to say is, well, we think black males are more likely to do something wrong. But Birch is saying, I targeted the people who did do something wrong, not more likely who actually did it in front of me.
So what I don't get, I don't know, maybe I missed something when it comes to policing. Are we supposed to pay public servants to police based on preconceived notions? Or are we paying these public servants to keep us safe and to go after those who commit crimes right in front of them, okay? Or who commit crimes based on an investigation, right? Is that what, I mean, what are we supposed to pay them for? Is that what taxpayer money is going for? So they can, you know, just keep perpetuating this vicious cycle of discrimination and profiling? Is that what they're supposed to do? Because if that's what it is, then just let me know so I can understand why cops are being paid with our taxpayer money, so they can go out there and profile.
There's 2 different problems here. First is the quota. And so the system doesn't, like, it crushes any dissent, right? So the first judge ruled against them anyway. But we know there's quotas that countless NYPD cops, hey, don't disrespect the cops. The cops have come out and said, there's a quota system. We have to go and arrest X number of people, whether they did it or they didn't do it, right? I have to fill that quota. So I'm not looking to see, hey, who should I arrest based on crimes that were committed? I'm going to say, I'm going to arrest a certain number of people no matter what. And then on top of that, the second problem is they go, well, if you need to arrest people, the black males, that's who you arrest.
That's the reason why the vast majority of stop and frisks targeted blacks and Latinos. Okay, vast majority.
It was over 90% in New York City. And they find the one guy who's not in that, not doing it the way everybody else is. And they're like, look, we got 90% of people going on discrimination. Why won't you discriminate like everyone else? Why do you keep arresting or writing violations, citations for the people who are actually breaking the law? Why do you keep doing that instead of doing this, going after the people who are not but we have decided we're going to systematically discriminate against. Yet, some in America will look at that, hear that audio, and they'll look at it and go, I see no evil. I hear no evil. What? Targeting black males? I know, I just saw a commanding officer, I just heard a commanding officer in New York City say specifically, I don't care who's breaking the law, target black males. No, I didn't hear that. No, technically, he said half of that sentence here, half of that sentence over here. So, no, I hear no evil. I hear no evil. There's no racism in the world. The only reason that racism exists is if the Young Turks mention it. If we never mentioned it, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, we're talking about, we're the ones who somehow force this story so we can divide people, right?
Yeah.
We're
that cop who says, go arrest black males, right or wrong, he's not at fault. He's not being divisive.
Yeah.
When he says, go get me black males to arrest, he's not dividing the country at all. When we report on what he's doing, oh, you see that? Why don't you just shut up and let us be racist like we've always been? Why do you have to point it out? That's so annoying.
It makes
You're
it
being
so
divisive.
uncomfortable, right? Like, and you know what? I got to be honest with you guys. I love that it makes you uncomfortable, right? Anyone who's watching this right now and you're like, oh my God, my white country, I don't know what I'm going to... Good. I'm glad that you're uncomfortable. I'm glad that you're paranoid. I'm glad that you're a sorry little pathetic drone on Twitter behind an egg spewing your stupid violence and your hatred and your bigotry, okay? Keep doing what you're doing. You're pathetic. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention is that Michael Birch has a really interesting perspective because he's half Puerto Rican, half white, and he looks more white than Puerto Rican. And so he talks about how when cops would talk to him about racial issues like this, they wouldn't know that he's half Puerto Rican, and they would think like, he's one of us. You know, we can talk to him like this. He'll play ball just like we do. And he's like, no, I'm half Puerto Rican. Little did they know, all of these things that they were saying to me were really getting under my skin. And so I love that he's speaking out, and I love that he's doing something incredibly courageous by going after his employers in this lawsuit.
And by the way, so if he thought the way right-wingers think, what would he do? Only care about his own. But in this case, he keeps saying, I arrested more Hispanics than anyone else. It was never about the cops. It was about the system that you wanted to protect. That's what it was about. So, and the way that it changes is through heroes like Birch coming out and telling you what the reality is.
Bernie Sanders has been attacked pretty harshly over the course of the past week by his former supporters or current supporters. It's kind of hard to tell in some cases today if people actually support him, but they've been attacking him because of his endorsement of Hillary Clinton. As if endorsing Hillary or not endorsing Hillary was the only thing that Bernie Sanders planned on doing in politics for the course of the rest of his life, which I don't believe and he doesn't believe, and he's made clear for a long time that revolutions are not about one election. They're about much more than that. And to that end, he announced today some of the steps he's going to be taking going forward to put that revolution into actual effect outside of the context of whoever wins this presidential election or whatever happens at the convention. And there are 3 organizations that he has proposed so far. We have some initial details on those. The Sanders Institute will help raise awareness of enormous crises facing Americans, which I take to mean continuing to push forward Bernie's core message, which has always been about the enormous crises facing America and Americans. The Our Revolution political organization will help recruit, train, and fund progressive candidates' campaigns. And a 3rd political organization, which is currently unnamed, may play a more direct role in campaign advertising. And as an example of what he plans to use those last 2 for, Sanders plans to support at least 100 candidates running for a wide range of public offices, from local school boards all the way up to congressional seats, at least through the 2016 elections. So if you thought that, it was just vague language about making sure that we run a grassroots campaign, that we don't just compete for one elected position, but the entire range, from top to bottom, from the East Coast to the West Coast, no, he is actually putting that into effect right now as we speak. And we have a couple of quotes from Bernie about what exactly these organizations are intended to accomplish, what message he's sending to the Democratic Party. He says, if we are successful, what it will mean is that the progressive message and the issues that I campaigned on will be increasingly spread throughout the country. The goal here is to do what I think the Democratic establishment has not been very effective in doing, and that is at the grassroots level. Encourage people to get involved, give them the tools they need to win, help them financially. And so he is preparing for whether it's Hillary that wins the presidency or if it's Trump, that the progressive movement needs to continue to grow in the same way that it grew enormously over the 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency. It doesn't even matter if you have a Democratic president in office. You still need to make sure that people are learning, people are getting involved, and they're being educated and informed about what's going on in the country. And that is what he is doing. And he also said this: the way to go forward is to build a progressive movement around a very progressive agenda. What you're seeing is more traditional Democrats, more establishment Democrats, move in our direction because they see the support out there for our ideas. And that is exactly what we have seen over the course of the past 8 years. The country has changed, people have changed, and their views have changed, and the Democratic politicians have been forced to begrudgingly move in that direction. And that's what he sees going forward. That's what he sees his role to be. It's unfortunate. We all wanted him to be president, but this is incredibly important, perhaps more important in the long run, that we don't just elect a president, but that we change a country from top to bottom. And I think that we can all agree that these are good steps, necessary steps, not completely surprising steps, since he is putting into effect what he's been saying for a long time that he's going to do. Now, many people are still going to be pissed off at him because he endorsed Hillary Clinton, and they're not fans of Hillary Clinton, and that's fine. They're entitled to their opinions. But bear in mind that Bernie Sanders is not exactly new to this. He's not unwise. He's not a naive kind of guy. And there's every chance in the world that he understands just a little bit more about how to put the revolution into effect going forward than some of his anonymous critics online. And that's my final judgment.
A homeless student in Georgia experienced an act of kindness from police authorities and the community after he was discovered living in a tent near campus. So this story is about Frederick Barley of a Georgia town, and he's basically completely poor, had nothing in his name, and he really wanted to get an education, he really wanted to get a job, and he really wants to put himself through medical school. So apparently what he did is he took his brother's 20-inch bike, so it's a small bike, and he literally rode that bike 50 miles to attend a specific college, right? And he went to this particular area a month early so he can start looking for work around the area in time to make enough money to attend this school. So according to Raw Story, the officers were called on July 9th to a campsite near a Gordon State College parking lot where they found a 19-year-old homeless student staying in a tent hidden in some bushes. So, as I mentioned, Frederick Barley had gone through quite a lot just to even get there, and when he was confronted by cops, the way the cops handled it is how cops should always handle situations like this. So they told him, they're like, hey, you can't just live here, okay? And then they heard him out. They wanted to know what his story was.
And
so
then they tased him.
They didn't tase him. They didn't use any brutality.
No.
They showed him incredible acts of kindness, okay? So here's what Frederick had to say. The officer was so understanding, and he said, I definitely applaud you for doing this. We can't allow you to stay here, but I have somewhere you can stay. The stuff that's happening with police officers, I am black, and he didn't care what color I was. He just helped me, and that meant a lot. So what did the cop do? The cop paid for accommodations at a nearby motel for one night, and then the cop's wife posted about this experience online, on Facebook. And then the community rallied around him to support him financially, in any way possible, actually, to make sure that he can attend this school. So local residents bought gift cards, food, and clothing for Barley, and they bought him an adult-sized mountain bike and are working to get him a car.
Wow.
Okay, so the owner of the Sun Inn offered a free room to Barley until the dormitories opened, and the college agreed to let him move in early on Monday. Also, a GoFundMe page raised nearly $35,000 after his story aired on local media. So good things happen, okay? And they do get drowned out by a lot of the shitty stories that, you know, come to mind just in the last few weeks. But I wish that this kind of compassion and empathy was more common than what we're seeing right now.
Can I just say, when I read this, I was shocked because Barnesville is like one of those old good old boy towns.
That's right, yeah.
And talking about being pulled over right out off of I-75 down there, I've been pulled over at least 15 to 20 times.
Is that right?
When I was in the military in Jacksonville, driving up and down in 75, trying
I don't know why. I don't know how long. I don't know how many times it's going to surprise me. You know, but between the stories that J.R. I point to him because he's over here. J.R. Jackson has told me that you tell me, Senator Tim Scott, a guy I hate, but who told a really powerful story yesterday. I mean, I don't hate him personally, but hate his politics. And Philando Castillo with the 52 times in 14 years. It still surprises me. It's still like, you're in the military, you live there, right?
No,
And what did they say they pulled you over for?
Well, one said that I was going over the speed limit, which I for sure was going 4 to 5 miles over the speed limit.
Right, like everybody else.
Because I pull out my military ID, and then I used to keep my military ID in front of my license, so that's what you would see first. So then that would change the conversation,
right?
Rather than me trying to fill it out. But Barnesville is, like I said, it's like Lamar County, and it's it's probably I doubt if there are any blacks that live there. Maybe, a small 1-2%, if that. But it's like one of those towns that, have either, middle class or poor middle class. So when I read it, first I was like, wait a minute, Barnesville? I was like, that's not the Barnesville I'm thinking about. But like you said, Hannah, this is exactly what you want to hear. You want to hear stories like this. You want to hear stories like Officer Norman in Arkansas. And you want to hear, community policing. This is another example of
like David Brown in Dallas. I mean, that guy's
exactly.
Guy's a
Chief
really,
Brown,
really good police chief.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully things like this. But then it's like, why are we getting so like, oh my God, about stories like this?
It's because
that tells you what's going on with everything else and how crazy it is. Because we're getting excited about stories like this.
The way the police officers think, some have this mentality, some don't. So when we try and say all are good or all are bad, that doesn't really make much sense. Just like someone called the police on this guy first. And it seems like their motivation was, somebody get this guy out of here, I don't care what they do to him. And they probably hung around to see what would happen. Because that happens all the time. We've all had the cops called on us too for no reason. So when that happens, there's people who are looking for the bad route for that to go, and there's some cops that are looking for the bad route to go with that. But the fact that there's parts of society, and then once there's enough of a coalition of people that say, hey, we should stop with this, then all of a sudden you have this groundswell of people, as you said, even in this town that you wouldn't expect that in. Because people don't want to be that odd man out. They don't have enough courage to do it. So then now that they're, oh, this guy's okay. Oh, the police officer helped him. Now I can give something to this GoFundMe account. Now I can give him a free room for a month when this guy definitely had open rooms probably for the few weeks that he's giving him free room for. But they wouldn't think about it unless they know it's acceptable. Our society has to accept such a positive feeling first before they'll do it.
I didn't think about it in that way, but you're right. I mean, in this case, the cop not only showed compassion and empathy, but he showed leadership, right? And I love that. I love that he did that. And it's not just a story about the cops. It's about the community following suit and helping someone who needed help. And they saw that, hey, you know what? They didn't see him as a throwaway of society, which is so important, right? Because, he's homeless. He was dealt a really bad hand, and he's trying to make the best of that situation. But think about what would happen if this story turned out to be the antithesis of what actually happened, right? Like, let's say the cop was trigger happy and decided to shoot and kill him because he thought he posed a threat.
Correct.
How would the media cover that story right now, and what would the reaction be? The reaction would be, oh, well, he was a homeless person. He was a transient. I don't know what kind of stories they would come up with to make it seem like he's a bad guy. But again, he went through great strides just to get a college education. And I love that they had that conversation. That's all it takes. It takes a moment of dialogue, a moment of investigation to figure out who this person is and whether or not he poses a real threat.
That's the biggest problem that we have a lot of times. I'm considered a successful person in certain, realms or however you want to look at it.
If you say so.
Yeah, but still to this day, I get nervous when a police officer pulls behind me.
Right.
And a lot of times I can tell when I'm about to get pulled over. I've been in the military, I've been in, security training, different things, so I know different maneuvers that police officers use, and I know when I'm about to get pulled over. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I get pulled over, I open my sunroof, I let all the windows down, I cut the lights on inside the car, and I keep my hands on the steering wheel. I don't move it until the officer comes. They're going to come with the flashlight as soon as it's, and I swear on my mother's grave, This is what I do every time I get pulled over.
You know, it's funny.
And the reason why I do that is because I get nervous. Even today, I have nothing to hide. I have no warrants. You can Google me and see my picture if you wanted to. And I still do that to this day because I get nervous.
There is now a coup in Turkey. Now, this used to happen once a decade, but it hasn't happened in quite some time. The last one was in 1980. And this coup is unusual in two ways. First, you have to understand that coups in Turkey are not to end democracy normally. They are normally done to protect secular democracy. That's very unique. Normally a coup anywhere in the world is the military taking over, oftentimes leads to a strongman or a dictatorship. That is not the history in Turkey. In Turkey, usually if a government has exceeded its mandate, its power, or beyond the Constitution, the military is a protector of secular democracy. They will step in and get rid of that government and then have orderly elections afterward. So that has been the history of coups in Turkey. Now, Erdogan is a right-winger. He is the president of Turkey, and he claims that he has won all these elections. So he says he's on the side of democracy. Now, some of those elections had great irregularities, such as a cat walking into a power outlet, which apparently knocked out 9 different cities' power. So some of these elections have stretched the bounds of reason, to say the least. So there is now a peace council. That is what the coup is calling itself. That is, they claim, taken over the country. But that's the second incredibly unusual part of this coup. Normally, a coup happens fairly quickly. Not every time. But usually there's a decisive blow. They take over important things like the media outlets. And in this day and age, you can't take over the media outlets. As you'll see, Erdogan went on FaceTime to get his message out. We'll talk more about that in a second. But you take over the media, you take over important police installations and the airport, etc., and you finally get the person you are trying to do a coup on. Right now, it appears they do not have the president. The military that is doing the coup does not have the president. Furthermore, the military is divided. So normally it is a united military
base that houses nuclear weapons. So it's going to be interesting to see if we really do choose sides.
The president and John Kerry both. There's some really interesting stuff here. The president called on all parties to support the democratically elected government in Turkey. John Kerry said the president and secretary agreed that all parties in Turkey should support the democratically elected government of Turkey, show restraint, avoid any violence or bloodshed. This is from the State Department. The secretary underscored that the State Department will continue to focus on the safety and security of U.S. citizens in Turkey. Obviously, there's some question as a NATO member, what are you supposed to do when there's a coup attempt of one of your member states? It is a complicated situation, and I'm pretty sure the U.S. wants to side with the winner.
Yeah.
Let me.
So the U.S. role in this is very important and very unclear. Because, look, it is normal operating procedure. I'm not saying it happened in this case. I do not have any sources on that. But normally, if an ally like Turkey is going to pull off a coup against the government, they would certainly consult with the United States.
Right, and it appears they didn't. We don't know. This is too early. But
okay, I'm curious about your evidence on that. What is not evidence is Secretary Kerry or President Obama's words. They would say that they're backing the government, no matter what they do.
So this is from Reuters. A senior EU source monitoring the situation said, quote, "It looks like a relatively well-orchestrated coup by a significant body of the military, not just a few colonels. They've got control of the airports and are expecting control over the TV station imminently. They control several strategic points in Istanbul. Given the scale of the operation," the source repeated, "it is difficult to imagine that they will stop short of prevailing. It's not just a few colonels," he repeated. This is 43 minutes ago. One European diplomat was dining with the Turkish ambassador to a European capital when guests were interrupted by the pinging of urgent news on their mobile phones. This is clearly not some tin pot little coup. The Turkish ambassador was clearly shocked and is taking it very seriously, the diplomat told Reuters as the dinner party broke up. However it looks in the morning, they will have massive implications for Turkey. This has not come out of nowhere, meaning it was planned. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, speaking jointly after talks in Moscow, said both hope bloodshed could be avoided. The U.S. State Department said Americans in Turkey should shelter indoors. So we still don't know.
There was a... Oh, sorry.
But that does, that suggestion that, again, that doesn't suggest that the U.S. didn't know, but it certainly suggests that it surprised a number of people who might have knowledge of it.
Yeah.
It would be, I would consider it shocking if the U.S. didn't know. And I'll give you more details of that in a second. And one of the top generals has been taken by the leaders of the coup. So there is definitely a rift within the Turkish military.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, it's shocking and surprising because Turkey hasn't had a military coup since 1980. But if you really think about it, it's not that shocking, especially when you consider that Turkey, among all predominantly Muslim countries, has been, you know, very vocal about remaining secular, right? So even though the country is divided among those who support Erdogan and those who, you know, might agree with the military coup, I mean, there is this need and this want to be secular, right? But one thing that really stood out to me was how the first thing Erdogan wanted to do was ask his supporters to go out into the streets, right? And he has been so horrific toward journalists and protesters.
Yeah.
And so as soon as he needs protesters for his own agenda and his own purposes, he tells them to go out on the streets and risk their own lives.
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous for them to go out there.